You're gonna be okay. They're gonna save you.
Drifting on the spaceway by the Beatrice Hotel, mapping out constellations of the place I know so well. Sifting through the system for the piece that knows my name. Endlessly I list them in the master game. Welcome to my world. Welcome to my only world. My head is full of space junk.
What's up, Walking Dead friends and family? It's Brian Castrillo here, back with another review, and this time it's for The Walking Dead World Beyond. And I gotta say, at this moment in time, World Beyond has my attention. They are the most interesting thing going on. The storyline is absolutely amazing. I'm just stoked. I'm amped about everything. I'm kind of on the edge of my seat, learning some of the things that we're learning. But yes, the World Beyond is killing it this season, and I'm here for it. So we start in the beginning, and we see, the CRM soldier, which goes back to episode 1, season 1, and of course Dr. Belsha's working on him, and you see like kind of checking the vital statistics of him. They're pumping him with an anticoagulant, which, because they're studying his blood and kind of how long it takes, someone who died to reanimate. So a lot of blood tests going on. And that's kind of how we start the episode. And then we see later on, we got Hope and Iris and Dr. Bennett. He's kind of got his arms in this contraption. He's testing, the stuff, the vial that Felix stole earlier in the early episode, and kind of seeing what it does. And they're discussing and they're talking about how that gas and how it's easy to make, and that's what was used to kill Campus Colony. But Hope brings up an interesting, aspect of it, is that type of gas is typically clear. So what does, what's the green, or what's the coloration of the gas, and what does it mean? And that's kind of what they're trying to figure out. Now, then we see Jadis come in the room. And this part made me smile. This is just absolutely funny. She comes in, and Silas is sitting there, and he's got his shoes off, and she's, calling his feet clompers and saying, I bet you can take big strides through a bunch of rocks and everything. I'm just laughing as she's clowning his feet. But one of the interesting things about this, as I'm looking at my notes, because there's so much going on, I had to take notes on this, but she mentions, do you like living, here or whatever, and Silas is like, it's like living in a junkyard, and she's like, you say that like it's a bad thing. And one of the interesting thing, well, Dennis comes in shortly after, and he says, and he's kind of sticking up for him. But an interesting thing is that, and this is kind of what people thought from season 1 what was going to happen to him, she asked him if he believes that he's going to make a good soldier. So I'm wondering if this is where Silas's future is going to be. Is he kind of, be brought into the military? Now, then we see Lila. She comes in and she's talking to, Doc. Well, actually, I'm sorry, the CRM, the military come in and says, Dr. Belshaw, you got to come with us. And and I guess they're figuring out, now that vial was stolen, like, what did you have to do with it? And then, we see her, after she's questioned, she goes and she's running into, Bennett's room where he lives, and saying, I know you took it or whatever. And of course, Bennett's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, just shut up and listen, because they're coming for you. They're going to come for your family and everything. And we need to find this. And she kind of gives him some information, and she says, don't tell. And then Bennett's like, all right, whatever. And then of course they're knocking on the door and they're saying, you got to come with us. So the tension is getting really thick in this episode, and it's looking kind of like, you know, Bennett's family is going to be in trouble throughout this whole thing. And so after that, we see, you know, while he's being taken for questioning, Dr. Belshaw, you know, she catches up with the girls, you know, Iris and Hope, and she's basically kind of threatening them, saying that, you know, we need to know where this is. They're going to kill your family. This is the only way that, you know, that possibly we could all survive and come out of this. And she's, you know, telling them what they're there for. But I don't want to just tell you. I want to show you. So she brings them down to where, you know, her secret lab is, where she's, you know, studying these A's. You know, of course, remember the A's and the B's, and where they had that soldier, and this was really kind of interesting, is, you know, she's talking about how, what the CRM is doing and how they did gas these 2 other cities, and she basically confirms it, and we see, let's see, it was Dr. Abbott, and she's showing him, you know, the CCC footage, and, you know, she releases them, and then there's a rat that comes through, and she's, you know, telling him about why this is essential for the future, and it wasn't, she didn't want to do this, but, you know, they threatened her and whatever. And then at the end, you know, you see Dr. Abbott, and he finally, you know, as a walker. This is, of course, the guy that we saw in the post-credit scene back in season 1. And she said, you know, and she says, you know, he's finally eaten it, and she says, let's see how I want to get this correct, but eventually the rat will get tired, but the dead won't. And that was kind of what she was just showing, kind of reaffirming how, you know, dangerous this is. So then we see a scene where Dennis and Silas is back, you know, back where they're working at, and Silas admits to him, he's like, I wasn't lost, and Dennis says, yeah, I know. And he's kind of like, you know, well, why did you stick up for me? And he's like, you know, you're a good kid. And so Silas goes to him, is like, well, what if the CRM isn't really what you're thinking of? And, you know, Dennis is like, who reminds me of Aaron Rodgers for some reason, but he's like, why would you say that? And he's like, and Silas like, never mind, because of course he knows what he learned from his friends, but it appears that Dennis at this point does not really know what's going on. That this project, I guess, Votus is, you know, being used, and they're experimenting on people, and they got plans to destroy Portland, that we find out later in the episode, because so we come back to where Dr. Bennett is being interrogated by Huck and Jadis, and they're kind of picking out his relationship with Dr. Belshaw, finding out what, you know, where his mindset is. And then ultimately Belshaw shows up, and she's like, you know, I found it. And of course Jadis, being the type that she is, she's like, well, you know, interesting, you know, how did you find that? And you know, she says, well, I misplaced it. But then she rats out Dr. Bennett and says that he's the one who stole it. But then she starts threatening Jadis, saying, you need him, so you can't kill him. He is very important to the upbringing, and then he can pass on his information down to his daughter, and how they can work together. And I'm like, are you really in a position to really be threatening Jadis, knowing who she is, who she works for, and considering what they did to Dr. Bennett, which we learned that he found out what the military was, or what he was planning on telling the political aspect of it, who doesn't know what the military's doing, as we learned from Dr. Belshaw, and then he was taken out. So I'm thinking, are you really in a position to be making these type of threats? But ultimately, Jadis tells Bennett, like, this is your second capital crime, but for now you are safe, and your security detail and everybody's safe. You don't have to worry about it. But one of the things that Belshaw told Jadis is that that she has almost a breakthrough, and that's why she needs him. And we're going almost 8 hours with this test subject, that military soldier back from season 1, episode 1, that he's going on almost 8 hours without turning, and this was kind of a breakthrough, which is what they're trying to do. So, Jadis is like, wow, this is rare, but not unheard of, but this is exciting. So let's go check this out. So Huck, and Dr. Belshaw head on down to the lab, and that's where then we're finding out that he actually had turned in under 8. And Jadis is like, I was getting excited about this. You had told me this. And then she basically tells Huck to cut the straps and release him. And Huck's like, are you serious? So, she tells Belshaw to back off. They let the walker loose. And it's kind of poetic, because then she mentions eventually the rat, of course she's a rat for ratting out the Bennett family, will get tired, but the dead won't. So that was kind of poetic that happened. And interesting that Jadis did that. It's just kind of interesting the sides that Jadis is taking throughout all this. But she said that she's in a position to make decisions for the CRM in their best interest, and that's kind of what she did. Is she took out Dr. Belshaw because she felt that she couldn't be trusted. And if you go back to that interview, she had mentioned and this is where this was kind of interesting to me, is that he mentions that you confided in Dr. Belshaw about your daughter's gifts, and she immediately went to Kublik and told her about that. And Bennett was, he was taken by surprise. But then so that kind of interesting where we're going on Jadis's journey as well as Huck's, who those two are right now are my favorites in this episode, as well as Hope, who's really interesting as well. But let me see what else we got here. Make sure I'm not missing anything. But eventually, then we come to see Percy. Huck is going back to her place. It's dark. She's throwing her gun down and everything. And then Percy's there sitting there waiting with the knife. He grabs the gun. And you can tell he wanted to kill her. But, and interesting that Huck was telling her, go ahead, just do it. We all know that I probably deserve it. That's the gun that I shot you with. And that's the gun that I shot your uncle with. And almost like pushing him, but then saying, because Huck right now is basically in between a rock and a hard place. She doesn't know what to do. You can tell when you're reading her face that she is emotionally distraught. She does not want to be a part of this, but she knows that she has to play her cards right. So then we see Percy come back to where Felix and Bennett and Iris and Hope are back in their room, and Iris answers the door when Percy's knocking, and he looks distraught, and then he tells them about the plans for Portland, because we have to assume that that's what Huck told him. So they're getting ready to basically gas another 100,000 or however many people are living in Portland to justify this. And then we see another scene where Huck is telling Dennis, and he's like blown away about the plans of Portland. Like, when is this supposed to happen? And this kind of confirms what we thought about Dennis, that he was, not aware, especially when, Silas told him what if the CRM isn't what you thought it was? And now Huck is basically confirming that. But then we see Silas, after they're done talking, Silas pulls up and he's got that new weapon, which is badass, that makes Walker's heads explodes, apparently. But he's watching, and then he sees, Dennis kissing Huck. Now, he doesn't trust Huck because of what he learned. And then, Huck sees him, and you see the end of the pole. It's got blood on it, so I don't know if that was from a walker he killed or someone else. And Huck's like, I guess you got a lot of shit to talk about. So we don't know what's going to happen there in the next episode. But then the most interesting episode at all, or part of the episode, is Mason catches up with Hope, because earlier when she was hiding that vial in the room where they kind of hang out, they're talking, and then he's mentioning how his dad probably is like, oh, why aren't you in the military? And Hope's like, wait, your dad's in the military? Now, keep in mind a few episodes back how she's very cognizant of what's being said and what's going on. Remember when she was looking around the campus colony, seeing the cards, and just paying attention to everything. And then he's like, oh yeah, my dad's in the military. That's Major General Beale. I thought you knew. And then, the look on Hope's face says it all with that. So clearly, I mean, when we first met him, there was something off about him, but now we learn that he is the son of Major General Beale. Who that is, we don't know. Probably where Rick is. I imagine that he's with him. But then that's kind of how the episode tails off, and the way the pieces that are coming together, we're finally learning where Rick Grimes is. Well, not really where he is, but it's kind of setting up this roller coaster that's about to, shit's about to hit the fan. But let's talk about Jadis for a moment, shall we? Now, one thing we know about her is that she was trained by Huck, which means Huck is a soldier, and clearly she has surpassed Huck as far as importance within the CRM, because so she hasn't been with them as long, obviously, as Huck has. Now, of course, we remember her from The Walking Dead, and the last time we saw her, she was distraught. She was, you could tell that she was, worried about Rick, and she's almost like crying in the helicopter, saying, it's okay, you're going to be saved, you're going to be okay now, which tells me that there was some kind of feelings there for her. You go back to when she told Michonne that her and Rick were going to lay in bed together, which was kind of messed up at the moment, and then of course she eventually tells, after dating Father Gabriel Stokes, that her real name is Anne. So at some point she became comfortable and befriended Rick and Father Gabriel and that group, and I believe it's because there was a respect for the type of man that he is, Father Gabriel is, and that she felt like she was family, that she could actually let them know who her real name was. And so she was no longer going by Jadis. But interestingly enough, when she comes back to, the CRM, of course, after what happened to Rick, she's now going by not warrant officer, but she was using Stokes Gabriel's last name. So that's kind of an interest. That tells me that she's kind of hiding her true identity to the CRM, to Huck and everybody. And if, as we're going through this episode, we learn that it's been a long time, since Dennis has seen her, since Huck and whatnot. And clearly this woman, Jadis, is a very intelligent woman. I mean, she developed her own language with the junkyard people. She created this whole society. She's working for the CRM. So she's been able to move up. So what I'm kind of thinking is that maybe Jadis is not the villain that we think she is. And she is just, in my opinion, she's a chameleon. And she knows how to play sides. She did it to Negan when she was kind of, when she didn't really know Rick at the moment, and she, created a better deal for herself because, Negan offered her something more than Rick could at the moment. So maybe she is a chameleon. She's doing what she needs to do to move up, to put her in a position to have more knowledge of what the CRM is doing, to be able to help Rick. And I think we're going to find out that she's very good at what she does. And she is actually a super mole kind of on our side without telling anybody. She's moving up. She's clearly got the trust of Kubelik and Major General Beale. She's put in that position of power. So watch Jadis's next moves. Watch how she looks at people. Watch how she looked at Dr. Bennett, and take a moment to think about the sides that she's taken and who she's supporting. She's coming across as a villain to our people within the world beyond, but I believe she has a plan in place. Now, maybe this took a long time. We don't know what's going on with Rick, or the position that he's in, but maybe she's doing this to put herself in a position of power to help Rick. And she's creating, relationships to get information but at the same time, she's also smart. She wants to put herself in a good position for the future to be able to make the right moves. But I do believe that Jadis is kind of playing the position of a mole, and she's not really the villain that we're seeing her to be. I think now she's not telling Huck anything or anybody. She's just playing her own role. She's just being very secretive, doing her own thing, and going up the chain. And I have a feeling we're going to find out that she is playing the position of the mole. But what do you guys think? What do you think about this episode? What do you think about where the world beyond has taken us? What we're learning about the CRM and the political aspect of this, the science behind all this. Where do you think this is leading? What do you think about what she said about the rat and kind of used that against her? Which, if you listen to her, she's like, one of the things she said right after she repeated that, how the rat will eventually get tired, but the dead never do. She said after that, I couldn't have said it better myself, which means that she was listening to what Dr. Belshaw was saying to Hope and Iris when she took them. So she had some sort of knowledge, which is probably why they went looking, in that room. But I believe that Jadis knew what she was saying to her. Because, how else, why would she say, I couldn't have said it better myself, implying that she knew what she had said earlier? But what do you guys think? What did you think of that episode? I was really excited about it. We're getting closer to what's going on with Rick. We're pushing on towards the movies. This season has been really amazing. I know the first season was a lot of character building to lead us to where we are now, but I'm pumped. I'm loving this. But as with every review that I do, I like to give a shout out, and this is no different. I want to give a shout out to my good friend David Cameo, who is kind of the heartbeat of the Squawking Dead. He does excellent reviews himself. He really breaks down and gets down to the nitty gritty and details that you may not have realized that you needed to know. And you got to check out his podcast. And as always, I'm going to throw his information down into the video's description. But yeah, hit me up in the comment section. Press like if you love the video. I'd love to have you subscribe, and don't forget to check one of my videos back when the main picture of it is me and Norman Reedus, and I got a big giveaway that's coming soon when The Walking Dead returns. You will not want to miss that. But yeah, check out David's links. Check out the Squawking Dead. Make sure you follow him. And as always, I love you guys.